Hey, welcome students and parents, right, to the Makers ACT English Winter and Thanksgiving Program Seminar. I'll be your ACT English teacher for this course. My name is Jin Bae. 안녕하세요. 여기 Makers 어학원 ACT English 선생님 배진호입니다. 제가 한국말 잘 못해서요. 설명 줄 때 좀 섞이면서 주겠습니다. 이해가 좀 힘드시면 너무 죄송하고요. 너무 죄송해요. Guys, what I wanted to talk about in this video are just two main things. So first, I wanted to give you guys some information about our ACT English course, both for the concept class and for the practice test class. We call that our 실전반 class. And secondly, I wanted to talk a little bit about goal setting and change. I know it sounds a little bit strange, right, for this type of video, but I think it's kind of important and relevant. So 우리 오늘 설명은 좀 두 가지 얘기를 하고 싶어요. 첫 번째는 개념 학생, 실전반 학생들이 수업 어떻게 진행할 건지, 그리고 두 번째는 목표 세팅 and 어떻게 목표 만들 수 있는지 이런 거 좀 얘기하고 싶어요. So guys, let's go ahead and begin. Yeah? So first, I wanted to give you guys some information about how students will actually learn, right, in both the concept and the 실전반 classes. So for our concept class, you guys, a lot of the students in this class, they have no experience studying for or taking the ACT, and also their English level is a little bit weak. So 우리 개념반 학생들이 대부분 영어 좀 힘들고 그 ACT 개념이 하나도 없어요. 이런 학생 좀 많이 봤어요, 여기 수업에서. And so when I thought about the kind of students who would take this class, and I was thinking about designing a perfect class for them, I really wanted to focus on three main parts of the learning process, right? So what happens in class, for homework, and the mock exams, right? So for the in-class work, right, students will mainly be learning in two main ways, right? So the first thing is they're going to be learning about the 17 different concepts and question types that are asked on the ACT English test. And secondly, I'll also be teaching these students, right, a lot of the tips and the strategies, right, for how to become a better test taker. So I spent the last few years, right, probably studying for and practicing over 100 ACT exams. So that's about 7,000 plus questions. And what I've done is I kind of deconstructed the test and identified 17 different concepts and question types that the test likes to ask, right? So I categorized them into two main parts, right? So 첫 번째 부분은 그 문법 부분, right? So there's 8 concepts that are tested on grammar. Yeah, you can kind of see those here. We don't have time to talk about those in too much detail. The second part is what's called rhetoric, right? So rhetoric, if you don't know, is just the art of writing. So it's about the word choice that writers will use in a sentence, and it's also about how writers will organize, right, body paragraphs, and also the purpose behind their essay, right? So the message that they want to convey. So there'll be a lot of questions, right? A lot of concepts and questions asked on rhetoric as well. Right, so what students will do by the end of this course, they'll be familiar with all 17 of the concepts and question types that the test asks. Now, in terms of tips and strategies, right, what I'll do is I'll teach students, right, certain key words to look for, right, to help them to cross out answers immediately. Right, so guys, if you know anything about the ACT, there's patterns, right? So the ACT likes to use certain words, right, that are just not grammatical or conventional in the English language, right? So being able to spot or recognize these words and to cross out wrong answers immediately, right, will help you to become a better test taker. It'll improve your chances of getting the question correct. Also, when you're stuck between two answer choices, right, I'll also give you guys some tips, right, about how to make educated, smart guesses, right, at the correct answer. So these types of answer choices tend to be correct, right, a lot more, right, than other answers are, right? So guys, the second part of the learning process has to do with what takes place at home, right? So the homework. And so I really wanted to design the homework to really focus on learning, right? I want students to learn the knowledge, Yeah, and also how to use that learned knowledge, right, to solve questions effectively, right? So there's going to be two main areas, right, of homeworks that students will get, right, for the concept class. So one has to do with, the ACT English textbook, and the second has to do with practice questions, right, based on the real exams. So for the ACT English textbook, you cannot get this book anywhere else except here at Makers. So 이 책은 그 다른 데 Makers에서만 사용할 수 있어요. 그 이유는 제가 썼어요, right? So I spent the last few months writing a very specialized and focused ACT English textbook. And this textbook is based on all of my observations and my experience studying for, taking, and teaching, right, the ACT test. So when students do their homework, they will be reading the textbook, right, and learning about the different rules, right, the 문법법s, as well as the different ways that one single concept can be tested. Right, so even though they're asking you about the concept of pronouns, it can be tested in many different ways. Yeah, and so students will also become familiar with, right, become familiar with that as well. And lastly, I'll also teach a step-by-step process, right, about how to solve, right, every single question type that's asked on this test. And so students will really get that knowledge about what the test tests, how it tests, and how to answer these questions effectively. Now, the third part of the class, right, is all about mock exams, right? So there's three parts of the learning process. We talked about in class, we talked about homework. These are going to be things that happen every single day, right? But the mock exam only takes place every week, right? So every single Saturday, students in the concept class, right, will take an actual ACT exam, right, on the computers, right? So it'll be the look and the feel, right, of these tests will be just like the 실제 시험 exam. So this will really help students to gain the sort of experience. It'll help them to manage their time better. It'll also help them to ease their nerves, right? And help them to better prepare, yeah, for the ACT actual test. So by the end of this course, right, what I really want is for every single student to perhaps, maybe they're starting off with getting about 40 questions wrong, right, out of 75. But I want to help every single student. I want to take them from about 40 wrong, and after about 4 weeks or so of the class, or to get no more than about 15 questions wrong on the test. And there's been a lot of students who've leveled up from the concept class into the 실전 classes after about 3 to 4 weeks or so. Now this change or this process doesn't take place really quickly, right? 좀 한 달 정도 걸려요. 첫 번째 두 개 mock 시험은 그냥 점수는 좀 낮을 수 있는데 세 번째 주, 네 번째 주에서 그 점수는 이렇게 확 올라가요. 그런 개념, 그런 experiences 많이 봤어요. And so I really think that this concept class, right, is really great for students who are trying to aim, or it's really great for students who have no base for the ACT and who will be able to score in the 80th percentile, right, by the end of this course. Now, moving on to our concept class. So our concept class, also called our 실전반 classes, right? The way that I designed this class, yeah, is very different from how I designed the concept class, right? And that's really because the students at this level, right, have a more solid English base, right? And a lot of these students also have some ACT experience, right? So a lot of the students in our 실전반 classes, they'll score anywhere from about 23 to about 30, 32, 33 on an ACT exam. And so the test or the class has to be designed very differently. So 여기 실전반은 컨셉반하고 비교하면 그 차이가 좀 많이 있어요. 그 이유는 그 학생들이 좀 영어 실력이 좀 더 있고 그리고 ACT 개념도 좀 있어서 이렇게 수업 진행 다르게 할 거예요. And so with the practice test class, yeah, I really wanted to focus on two main parts of their in-class experience, right? And so the first thing is, this is really like a two-part process. The first part is really about practice, right? So students in the practice test class will be taking a mock exam every single day. So 매일 그 mock 시험 볼 거고, And secondly, it's all about reviewing the test, right? So the mock exams that they take, right, we'll be covering them in class. So just like the Concept Kids class, when they take the mock exam every Saturday, the practice test class, right, will be taking a mock exam every single day, right? And so again, this kind of practice is really, really important because it helps students to take the test like it's the real thing, right? So again, it helps them to manage their time better. It helps them to control their focus, their emotions, right? You know, and it'll help them to better prepare for the actual exam. Now, after students take the exam, right, they'll be given what's called a report analysis, yeah? And so I think this is great. You know, I'm not sure, I think Makers is one of the only places, right, that really does this. And I think it's fantastic. So this report analysis will give every student, right, a detailed breakdown, right, of the concepts or the question types that they're good at and also the areas that they're kind of weak at. Plus, it'll go over the question numbers, right, that these students missed, so they don't have to self-correct and they don't have to waste any time, right, correcting the exams. Now, after students get this exam, what we'll do is we'll review, right, all of the questions that students missed, right, in class. Now, when I go over the questions in class, I will provide a very detailed explanation, right, of all of the questions that students missed. I'll break every single question down into its fundamental parts. So for example, what concept you're being tested on, you know, as well as, you know, what to look for in the passage, right, to get to the correct answers, yeah? And so all of that kind of work, that review and reflection, right, will be done in the classroom. Another part of what we do in class is based off of a lot of the questions and concepts that students are missing, we'll have extra practice questions, right, that we'll solve together. Now, once students go home, the work doesn't end, right? So students will also be given homework in the Shichunban classes, yeah? And for the homework, I really wanted to focus on three main parts, right? Reading and learning, reviewing and reflecting, and isolating and training. The way that you have to think about ACT homework is very different from how you think about actual school homework, right? So 학교 숙제하고 여기 ACT 영어 숙제는 완전 다르게 생각해야 돼요. For school homework, most students are just thinking about finishing, right? They're just thinking about finishing or completing it on time, right? 근데 for the ACT English homework, the main focus has got to be about improvement, right? How can I get better? You know, and these are going to be three ways, right, that'll really help you to improve your scores. Now, the homework is not going to change, right? The homework stays the same every single day, right? Of course, the test is going to change, right? But the process of how you do your homework, right, remains the same. So the first part is, again, students will be given the ACT English textbook, yeah, and they'll be asked to read certain chapters from it. And this will give students a great chance to study the test. It'll help them to review certain concepts that they already know. It'll also help them to learn new concepts and strategies and processes, right, that they might have not known or that they're really weak at, right? Plus, you know, students are going to be asked to take notes, right, based off of, right, the reading assignments, you know. And again, you know, the amount of work that you do is going to determine how well you do on this test, you know. And so, you know, I really think that the extra note-taking is really important. Writing things down, right, helps you to remember things a lot better, right? 90% better, right? Helps you to retain that memory or that information, right? Much better than just reading and thinking about, right? Just looking at the material. Secondly is about review, right? So although we do review the questions in class, right, I also ask students to review the test at home as well, right? And so I believe in Korean we call this odap notes, right? Odap notes. So this is an example of a student who took wonderful odap notes. And if you notice, when you actually review the test, you're not just looking at the test, right? You're really spending time thinking about every single question, thinking about trying to put yourself in the test maker's shoes. And if you notice, the way that you take notes isn't just about the questions that you get wrong, but it's also about the questions that you got correct, right? In other words, you're just kind of writing down your thoughts, about this test, And the last part really has to do with your training, right? So I talked to you about the report analysis that you'll be given every day after you take the test. I'll also get one of these too, and so what I like to do, I spend a lot of time looking over this report, right, for all students, and I like to kind of identify areas that every student is weak at. So for example, this student only got 6 questions out of 9 correct for verbs, and only 7 questions out of 16, right, for purpose and strategy questions. So identifying the weaknesses, and then I'll create extra handouts, right, extra practice questions that students can kind of take and do at home. So what this does is it really takes a class experience and makes it personal, right? So 개인 수업 받는 것처럼 숙제도 할 수 있어요, And I think that's really, really important because every single student has different strengths and different weaknesses, right? And so I really think it's important as a teacher to be able to identify, right, the different weaknesses in each student and to be able to help them out in some way like this, okay? Okay. So guys, I tell this to all of my students at day one, so if you guys do end up seeing me or having me for class, you'll hear me talk about this too. Guys, the most important goal for me as a teacher, right, the single most important thing is to help every single 실전반 student get fewer than 5 questions wrong on this test. It's totally possible. I've seen it happen hundreds and hundreds of times, But you guys, I've learned from personal experience as well as from experience teaching thousands of students that really goals are meaningless, right? They don't mean anything if you don't have the right systems in place, So take, for example, if you have 2 people, right, who have the exact same goal, right? So let's say the goal is to win the gold medal, right? One person, let's say, ends up winning the gold medal, and the other person who has the exact same goal ends up getting last place, right? So if you ask yourself, well, hey, what's the difference between these 2 people? You cannot say it was the goal, right? Because they had the exact same goal. The thing that makes all the difference, right, between whether or not a person succeeds or doesn't, right, is the systems. It's the habits, the routines, right, the processes, right, that people have in place. There's a really great quote that I love, right, that says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, right, you fall to the level of your systems. So if you don't have a good system in place, right, it's going to be very difficult for you to succeed, okay? Guys, and look, to be honest, I want every single one of you guys to succeed on this test, right? I know how difficult or how frustrating it could be, or how worrisome it could be, right, to not do well on the ACT or the SAT, whatever the test may be, right? So I want every single one of you guys to do well, right, on this test. But I honestly don't care if you learn from me or if you come here to Makers. 솔직히 얘기하면 저한테 안 배우면 상관 하나도 없어요. It doesn't really matter. If you are going to learn somewhere else, though, I really beg that you ask, right, them about their systems, right, for how they help students to get better scores. Most of the times, if the places cannot explain their system or their processes specifically or clearly, right, or if they just don't know, right, you might have to second guess going there, and so I don't know exactly what you will do, right? That's for you to decide, right? But one thing that I do know and that I do believe is, to the core of my being, is that change is possible. I've experienced massive transformations in my life, and I've seen it with a lot of students as well. So what I want to do with this last part of this video is just give you an example of a student who had that sort of transformation or that change and succeeded on this test, right? So you'll see, I had to erase part of the name, right, just for privacy reasons. So, but the name will remain the same. The only thing that'll change will be the dates, right? So this is day one of this student, yeah? And he started off coming here, getting about 28 questions wrong, right, on the English section. Now, using the system, right, the process, he would do he would do his homework really diligently. He would ask a lot of questions in class, right? After about a week or so, right, at day 6, he started to see improvements to his score, right? So he went from about 28 wrong to about 14 questions wrong after about a week. Right? And I cannot show you every single day, right? But what I can show you is over the course of the next few weeks. Sure, the days, some days his scores would go up, other days his score would go down, right? So it would kind of go up and down and up and down. But after about 3 weeks or so of this class, right, and just using or applying the same systems, right, every single day, he started to see his score, right, really improve, So he was getting about 3 wrong or so, after about the 3rd week, And of course, the scores would kind of go up and down a little bit, right? But after about a month, right, after starting the ACT class, his scores were very, very consistent, right? He was consistently getting fewer than 5 questions wrong on this test, And so this is just one example of one student, right? But I've seen this kind of transformation and change take place time and time and time again. The most important thing though, right? Of course, this student wanted to get a 36 on the test. Of course, he had high goals for himself, right? But the most important thing that allowed this person to change, right, was the systems, right? Was the processes, right? That the daily work that he did, right, to really help improve his scores, And so guys, before I actually go, there's one more question that I really just want to ask. And that question is this, are you ready to maximize your potential, right, and master the ACT? By the end of this course, you guys, you'll have the confidence, right, and the experience, right, to score great on this test, You'll also have the knowledge and the tools, the skill sets, right, to become a really confident test taker, And so if those are things that really appeals to you, then guys, I will see you next semester, right, in class. Guys, I hope the video wasn't too long, and I hope you guys could all understand, right, everything that I was saying. Again, you guys, my name is Jin Bae, and I'll be your ACT English teacher right here at Makers. Thank you very much, you guys. Have a great day.